Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terrion Arnold, Nate Wiggins, Quinyon Mitchell. What do all these guys have in common? They're in the discussion for CB1. But how many actual CB1s do we have in this class? We're going to talk about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout and a senior draft analyst. And guys, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And you know, I got to kick this intro to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. You talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Tigers, man. And the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where you can expect championship level content surrounding the NFL Draft 24/7, 365. Man, I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, every listen, every download. We greatly appreciate it. And DP, this is the cornerback show. We're talking cornerbacks. We talk playmakers. Now we got to talk about the guys that face off with those guys, right? That lock them down. And in the history, DP, we've had some really good cornerbacks. We've had the Christian Gonzalez's. We've had the Sauce Gardners. We've had the Derek Stingley's, right? But who can be cornerback ones in this draft? Then we're going to talk about those cornerback twos, right? With upside. And we're going to wrap this thing up talking about what I believe one of the deepest talent pools that nobody's discussing. And that's the nickel position for the cornerbacks. But DP, before we get this started, man, why don't you hit with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. CB1s, Keith, and it's not just who can be the CB1 of the class, but teams that need a guy to step in and cover the top receivers on opposing teams in the NFL on Sundays. Teams are looking for that guy. And when I think about this class, Keith, I wrote down 5 names. I wrote down Nate Wiggins out of Clemson, Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama, Terrion Arnold out of Alabama, Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, and Keith, I got a surprise name I think that you might be shocked by, Cooper DeJean, cornerback out of Iowa.
I am surprised.
I saw the look on your face. I was like, I know I'm gonna get him with this one when I wrote the list down.
I'm surprised by the Cooper DeJean one. I'm gonna rattle off my list real quick of CB1s, and I'll say this, man. This made this so difficult, DP, because I think that this class, right, and these are my, I guess, tiers right now. But I'm probably going to drop something, or I know I'm going to drop something, you know, as far as really ranking my corners, and I wouldn't be surprised if I have a lot of shakeup, because I think that this is starting to turn into not a popularity contest, but names that are most popular, and we're like accepting of them being CB1s, right? Versus some guys that are highly skilled that we've seen in person, right? Even at the Senior Bowl. So looking at this, DP, real quick and go through my list. Yes, I have Quinyon Mitchell, right, with the upside of a CB1. Terrion Arnold, right, in that category. Kool-Aid McKinstry, yes, in that category. I'm going to throw Ennis Rakestraw in there, DP, as the upside of a CB1. And I think that's going to be my cutoff. I think I'm gonna have 4 in that. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about our guy. How did I forget about Nate Wiggins? Right, I forgot about Nate Wiggins too. I'm sorry, and I have those 5 guys in the they can be cornerback ones for NFL team. Now, you mentioned Cooper DeJean. I'm gonna ask you why and how, and I'm also ask you, is he not a safety in your eyes, or you think he's a true corner? Because that's why I'm seeing more and more people putting him as, you know what, he's not a cornerback. He's just the best. Not, I won't say just, but he's the best safety in this class.
Yeah, I think he could be the best safety in this class for sure. But I'm perfectly fine leaving him at corner, Keith. I think with his athleticism, his strength, his tackling ability, his ability to play outside and in the nickel in terms of traveling, and he's, to me, a man-to-man matchup specific guy. But I think, you know, especially when we see so much a lot of zone, a lot of cover 3, cover 4, eyes pan towards the quarterback and forward, where you don't have to do a lot of transitions, right? We see Sauce Gardner is talked about as one of the best corners in the league, and he's rarely in man-to-man situations over with the Jets, right? We've seen it with Tariq Woolen in Seattle. He had all-pro rookie year playing mostly zone, but he will play man-to-man based on the matchup, right, against specific guys. So I think that's why I'm with Cooper DeJean. Is like, yeah, he could be a safety, but I'm perfectly fine with him at corner because he has the ball skills, and I think you allow him to be his best and play his best and be as reactive of an athlete as he is when his eyes are panned forward. That's why people are like, man, I could do a lot of different things with him as a safety. And while I agree with that, I just feel like, man, putting him in the cover 3 scheme, maybe some cover 4, or even some cover 2. And like I said, man match principles. You think about, was it Gus Bradley? I think he's over there with the Colts. If he was the fault, if they didn't go corner in round 1, and Cooper fell to round 2, that would be an ideal situation for him. I think he could be a cornerback 1 in that specific realm, right? And how they use him. I just really love his skill set overall. He's not the most polished man-to-man guy, like we see him from Laterion and Kool-Aid. Those guys with kind of fluid hips and quick feet that can just turn and transition and swivel. He may not have that, but I think if you put him in his position in the best spot, I think you can get a high-level football player out of him.
Yeah, and I think that's gonna be the conversation, right? Is going to be landing spots for him, and I mean I feel the same way about Nate Wiggins, right? Is a landing spot specific situation. Obviously, he tested athletically, right, like off the charts. But I think you can kind of put him in that same bracket of landing spot. This has the potential to, he has easily the potential to step in and be a top corner in the NFL immediately, somewhat like what Sauce Gardner was able to do. DP, my surprise guy was in his Rick Stroud Jr., man. And I say it again, we say it all the time, out of sight, out of mind, right? But when I cut the film on, man, this guy has everything you want in a cornerback as far as you watch him from the waist down, the quick feet, the fluid hips, man. I thought he was able to tempo things really well, just being able to mirror and match wide receivers, right? And over my time, especially at LSU, right, watching these guys up close, in person, every day at practice, that's the things that translated, right? Like that's the guys that can play man to man. And I just love it. And one thing I loved his intensity for the game. You cut on the LSU game, I think he's fighting over blocks, and then he punched out the ball to force a fumble. And I think he recovered the fumble. You're talking about playing the cornerback position. So I just feel like he has NFL pedigree, DP. And I see that. And that's why I think I said this on the podcast, right? I got Darius Slay, but I didn't know if it was Darius Slay because he was wearing number 2 like Darius Slay. But that was kind of my guy. Now with Quinyon Mitchell, DP, throwing him into the tier 1, is there any pause from not concern, but maybe I still have more to see, because we watched him at the Senior Bowl and he had some really good reps, and then he had some reps where he got beat, right? But it was a good showing for a small school guy. But also, are you expecting more variance from rep to rep to him, or do you think he's you consistently, what you're going to get? Because I know we kind of had that conversation around Terrion Arnold.
I think with Quinyon, and I remember, interviewing him and talking to him off camera at the Senior Bowl. And I think early on, especially depends on what scheme he goes into. Like if it's like a heavy man-to-man, you're gonna see some variance because he played a lot of cover 4 at Toledo. And he talked about it. He said, man, I'm out here at the Senior Bowl working on my man technique and my press man technique, and I'm just learning what to do and what not to do, right? Like, shooting the inside hand, locking the inside hip, getting countered cross face on a inside release and different things of that nature, opening the gate too early. The Senior Bowl while it was a dominant performance for him, it was still at the same time a learning experience for this young man of now I get to actually play outside of the scheme I was in. And I think that's where, for me, I find that solace of like watching him figure it out, right? Not just figure it out in press man, figure it out against different skill sets and body types. The physical guys like a Malachi Corley and a Brendan Rice who want to be physical in the contact window compared to a guy like a Roman Wilson who's going to be no nonsense. And that's the word he used when he talked about Roman. He said, man, that's a no nonsense guy. He's going to get into his stem, get into his release, and get into his route. He's not going to dance and do everything else. So learning how to handle different guys and different release packages and skill sets, I think that's along with what he put on tape and his incredible athletic profile. and his intelligence, I think that puts him as a CB1 for an NFL team for sure.
Yeah, I can see that. It was just, you just asked the conversation because I know people are going to wonder, right? Just the small school guy, right? And even if you show well at the senior boards, like, okay, how consistent are those reps? But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing. And I think those are the names that people relatively know, right? But I think this is where we're going to have some shakeup. We're going to have some surprises, right? And that's with the cornerback 2 conversation, right? These CB2s with upside, or that second tier of cornerbacks. But I'm probably have a couple declarations, right, about how I really feel about these guys. So stay tuned. Coming up next, we're about to have a really good conversation about these cornerback 2s.
Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every single game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a number 1 seed, it's time to go dancing, guys, on America's number 1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm going to repeat that for you. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets back if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to bet on everything, to use on everything, like point spreads, money lines. Guys, you can even pick who you believe is going to win it all. Again, that's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, and to pick who you believe is going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Cornerback 2s with upside, Keith, and the guy that you mentioned as your surprise is right at the top of my list, Ennis Rakestraw. I have to finish the deep dive on him, but he's right there. I think you walk him in as a rookie, and I'm not going to lie, I think about a team like the Eagles, right? Well, they still have some questions at corner. Yep, you got Darius Slade. James Bradbury was not the guy that you thought you were paying for 2023. And I feel like you put him alongside like a Darius Slade, alongside another established starter. He has that upside to where when it's time, then he steps into the shoes as that CB1. Like you said, fluid hips, footwork, patient, just a man-to-man skill set and everything. I just got to finish, like, come to full fruition and come to full circle with them doing the deep dive. Mm-hmm. But I think from what I've seen from him, like, man, put him right now as a CB2 with upside. I absolutely love that. Keith, the rest of my list, TJ Tampa, who I think is a guy that I know that you were a little bit lower on, but I really like what I saw from him over from Iowa State. Renardo Green from Florida State. Kyrie Jackson, big corner from Oregon. And then I'll go Elijah Jones, another taller, lankier corner from Boston College. Those guys were basically the meat and potatoes of my CB2s with upside list.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go Max Melton for sure. And this is all, I know we have to talk about the nickel conversation, right? So yeah, I'm trying not to throw out the nickels, but it's tough because they're also part of my favorite parts of this class. Just this cornerback class, period. Who did I say already? I said Max Melton. Jarvis Brownlee. I'm gonna go Jarvis Brownlee, and then I'm gonna throw in Renardo Green, and then I'll throw in Kyrie Jackson, and that's probably my 4 as far as that next tier of guys. And a DP, what was the conversation I wanted to have was that I think these guys, when you talk about the Renardo Greens, the Max Meltons, the Jarvis Brownlees, I wouldn't be surprised if they can have equal, comparable careers to that tier 1 conversation that we just had, because those dudes have it, right? We talk about the quick feet, the explosiveness, the ball skills, the versatility to play outside, the versatility to play inside, competitive, right? Just the athletic profile to match. So I actually really like the CB2 situation, and I think there's a lot of plug and play starters like this. Max Melton, he's, to me, I think he's right there on the fringe of you feeling like this guy is going to step in day 1 and start for a defense, right? Just when you watch him, how he carries himself, not only on film, but when we watched him in person at the Senior Bowl too, is just, you just got a professional vibe from him, right? And also he's the younger brother, I believe, of Bo Melton, so he's going to understand the NFL and how it goes about it. But I'm a fan of Max Melton for sure.
No, I like Max. I'm gonna save my thoughts on Max for the next segment, because that's why I struggle with him, man. Like he's just one of those guys. Him and a couple other guys, I'm like, outside nickel. And I'm like,
You-
we'll
Yeah,
figure it
I
out.
want to throw out another name and get the conversation started. Neither one of us mentioned Cam Hart. Um, is he? Was it a name that slipped by you, or is it a name that is not necessarily on this tier for you?
I struggle with Cam because I think we met him at the Senior Bowl, talk with him, you know what I mean, away from the field, everything. High IQ kid, really intelligent. We went to Notre Dame, you know he's smart. You know what I mean? You're not getting in there without being intelligent. But like he's legit, what, 6'3", 6'2", tall, long, broad-shouldered, long arms. I think for me, it's the movement skills where I still have concerns with him, like in totality, right? Where I talked about Cooper DeJean being, you know, a guy that he's more of a specific man-to-man guy. I feel like Cooper still moves more fluid than Cam. Cam's movements and hip swivels and transitions are very segmented and rigid. Where I'm watching him against guys, I'm like, if you're a quick-footed guy that can stress that a specific hit point of the gate, you can get him early, right? Now he tested well, and everything, but I just feel like this is a guy that's going to be probably third round. I think is where you're probably going to get Cam, and I think for me he's going to fall right outside. Him and like Nehemiah Pritchett fell right outside of that CB2 with upside situation. I think they're more CB3s with upside to be CB2s. But Keith, Renardo Green from Florida State. We talked about him recently. His tape against Malik Neighbors is
It was
maybe
fun.
one of the best cornerback tapes of the whole 2024 class. Right? When you got such a guy that's so explosive, so dynamic, right? Who has good strength, like a Malik Neighbors, who can do so many different things to hurt you and to stay in phase, to make it difficult for him. I can't remember. I think he picked off Jaden Daniels
Yeah,
on the
he
left
did.
sideline where
He
he was
did.
real physical with Malik. I think Malik ended up slipping because he was so physical in the stem. Malik couldn't keep his balance. He went to break, lost his footing, and Renardo's like, give me that. I'll take it. You know what I'm saying? I'm upright. Thank you, Jaden Daniels. Like it was just watching him, and you talk about pedigree, like those guys that just step up to the moment, right? Knowing what the bright lights mean. And for Florida State, that was the game that kind of set their 2023 off to a undefeated, to the start for an undefeated season. Big time game. And he was not afraid of the limelight whatsoever. So I feel like this is a guy that just has that dog in him, but also just footwork, physicality in the contact window, mid-stem. He's going to be hip to hip, but also cognizant and aware of reading the receiver's body language and body movement to know when to turn, when to pan his eyes back to the quarterback, be in position for some interception opportunities.
Yeah, no, that's him. And I like I said, I think the only thing you're going to have to worry about with Ronaldo is more if he's going to be too physical on the next level, right? And that's what I put in his report over at the Draft Network, is that you're just going to have to worry about the holding penalties, the pass interference, because he's scrappy, he's going to get after. But I think, and I said this on this podcast, right, is that he's one of those guys that if you feel like you need a tougher team and a tougher defense, and you're a D coordinator trying to change the culture of your defense, right? He's one of those guys that you don't mind playing corner because he's going to step in. He's going to do all the things the right way. He's going to play full speed, full effort. So I really like that. Real quick, before we wrap this up, it was one other name that didn't get thrown out there as far as the CB2s with upside. And I kind of skipped over it, but it was Kamari Lassiter, the cornerback from Georgia. We didn't bring his name up. I want to ask you real quick before we transition. Was this a guy that was, I guess, intentionally left off? Was there more concerns, or is he a guy that you plan on kicking down to the nickel because I know he is a smaller frame guy, or was he a guy that you just simply felt that, hey, he wasn't good enough to be in the CB2 with upside conversation?
Yeah, he's going to be in that nickel category for me.
Okay.
Not the most
Cool with
athletic guy.
DP. I gotta stop. I'm releasing all your names for the nickel conversation, man. So let's hurry up. Let's transition so we can get into this nickel, the best slot in nickel cornerbacks, like I said, which in my opinion is one of the most talented groups of this entire draft class. I think you're gonna find a lot of talented hybrid nickel players. So coming up next, man, we're about to get into this nickel cornerback conversation.
You shouldn't have to worry when it comes down to buying tickets to your next big event. But if you wait till the last minute, you will. because you're trying to compete with other buyers and find the best deals. But guys, let me introduce you to Game Time. They are the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Some of the benefits: last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. Their tickets are easy to find and buy. And guys, this is my favorite part of using the Game Time app. You can see the views from all the seats in the venue. So before you purchase your ticket, you know what vantage point you're going to have. That is so valuable to know. Okay, this is what I'm going to see. If I buy this ticket, no, I'm going to buy a ticket a little bit closer. I want a little bit better vantage point. Guys, if you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, this Sunday, March 31st at 6 p.m., you can see the Los Angeles Clippers versus the Charlotte Hornets for $13 per ticket on the Game Time app. So all you need to do is very simple. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And Keith, we talk about nickels, man. A loaded group. You know, truthfully, when you think about it, at the very top, Mike Sainristil from Michigan is the best, to me, the best pure nickel in this class. I think he can play some outside, but you put him inside, he's a blitzer, run defense, he's physical, a really good athlete, played wide receiver for 2 years. So you're talking about a guy that can run routes for wide receivers. Mike Sainristil can do that. And because of that background at receiver, he'll take the ball away. DJ James from Auburn, another guy who played a lot on the outside at Auburn in coverage, but I think his skill set, his size and frame and athletic profile is going to allow him to thrive in the nickel, being able to kind of match up with all those quick twitch guys. Kamari Lassiter from Georgia, Max Melton from Rutgers. But Keith, this is such a deep group. You talk about Andrew Phillips, one of my guys, like a guy that's not talked about a lot from Kentucky.
At all. Man. I was going to name him too. There was a guy that before the Senior Bowl, I didn't know much about him. But after one-on-ones, I was like, I'm going to watch the film, right? I'm going to watch the film because this dude has the goods also. And you're talking about just real sticky in coverage. And when he locks you down, right? And you can tell those guys that aren't tempoed or aren't sped up, right? And they running at a good tempo, good pace, and they're under control. When you know the receiver at the top of the stem, right? They have that two-way go. And then the cornerback playing in trail technique, right? He's just sitting right under the wide receiver. And then when they break, they undercut the route, right? And then turn around, look for the football. And they like, hey, I knew it was coming, right? And you love those type of reps. And then that's what Andrew Phillips is definitely capable of.
No, 100%. He crazy enough, he had one of the better performances in Mobile, but we walked out of there and felt like it was almost an afterthought, the way that he performed in one-on-ones against a lot of these bigger body guys that were down in Mobile at the receiver position. He did not shy away from it. And then also, and this is a guy that I kind of go in either the second segment or the third, Kalen Carson from Wake Forest, Keith. I really like what I've seen from him, man, and his ability to, again, tape against Keon Coleman. You want to talk about pedigree, battling against the best. He went out there. He put on the show. He had some low moments in that game where Keon just was a superior player. But in the nickel, outside, like this guy has good footwork, athleticism, just a good man-to-man cover. And he works, I think, with OD3, Oliver Davis, who works with like J.C. Horn and a lot of these other top corners. So you know his technique is going to be A1.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out a couple other names, DP. Finally get your Kamari Lassiter name out there, right? Nehemiah Pritchett, I believe he's one of those outside, inside, versatile guys, right? That probably give you some nickel reps. And he has the body type and the body profile to get the job done. And then, we talked about Andrew Phillips already. And then I'm going to look at Jerrion Jones. I'm going to put him in this conversation. Like, I think you have to put him in this conversation, right? Just from the simple fact of he does so much. And I was thinking about this because we were on our guy Ray Garvin's, we was listening to his with his live stream, right? And they had Jerrion Jones to the Detroit Lions. It was somebody's mock draft. I'm not 100% sure who it was. They were going through it. And this is like, I think second, third round. It might have been third round, something like that, right? And they had Jerrion Jones to the Detroit Lions. And I was like, you know what? I think forget the actual mock to the team, but talking about Brian Branch, I think what people are going to realize for the value of where you can get Jerrion Jones, he provides some of the same stuff that Brian Branch does did at Alabama and does for the Detroit Lions. So I really like him as a player. Just talking about one of those versatile hybrid, can play man, play zone, extremely instinctive, play against the run, just do it all type of player. So I have to put Jerry Jones in, and I probably put him as probably my number one target, right? As far as if you're talking about those hybrid nickel cornerback type football players. So I definitely have to throw him in there.
No, 100%. And I forgot that he was on my list, and I forgot to list him. You know what I mean? Because I do think he could play some outside stuff as well. But in the nickel, I think he can absolutely thrive, Keith. Like, and just be in the hip pocket of guys. And you know that the slot tight ends and the slot receivers in the NFL are like the safety blankets for quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
If something's going on, if they're getting hot or getting heated up by the defense, they're either looking for, okay, does a tight end have the matchup or is it the slot receiver? I got to get the ball out quick. And if you have a corner that can eliminate that, especially for defenses that want to pressure the quarterback with simulated stuff, absolutely. He fits bar none. I just think that teams are going to walk out of here with some outstanding nickel corners, man. Like,
yeah, I do
between this class, guys that could play outside, but it's like, man, if I put you inside permanently and just let you cook, absolutely. I think Mike Sanders still my top nickel. I think he's gonna go at worst top of the third. I think he can make his way into the second round, depending on how quickly the run on corners, especially the outside guys, takes place.
Yeah, do you think any type of size concerns is going to hinder his ability to go higher, or are you not concerned about that at all?
I'm personally not, but you know how the NFL is, man. You know, it's a grown man's league, right? All the old heads in the league, a lot of teams have their thresholds. So it's like, well, I know I saw you play outside, but for our outside corners, you're just a little bit too small. Your arm's not long enough. You're not big enough to fit there for us. But we can get you the third or fourth. We'll be happy. It's the draft logic from some of these teams make no sense in the world. Like, okay, he's good enough for you to draft a round later, but he doesn't meet the threshold to be drafted, round 2. It just doesn't make sense. You're gonna get the same football player, brother. Like, it doesn't really matter if you draft him second or third round, in my opinion. But I think it will for some teams. But I think some teams are gonna look at it and say, listen, we're just going to draft good players. We're going to draft a really good player. We need somebody that can be consistent, that has a good ceiling, that can come in day one and give us what we need. And Mike Sanders still brings that.
Yup, and DP, I'm going to wrap this show up. I don't think we mentioned him, man, but he's actually been on the podcast, and that is Washington State nickel corner, Shaw Smith-Wade. We didn't mention him, and he's another guy, Shaw Smith-Wade, I'm sorry. We didn't mention him, but I think that's another later round guy that'll go later that will give some valuable reps to a team. And so I just really want to highlight his name because he is a guy kind of that back end of the, the nickel class that can, play some high level football. But DP, that wraps up another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. Man, I want to say shout out to Everydays. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I forgot to say it at the top of the show. I'm going to say it at the bottom of the show, man. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, and then make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed to the hottest NFL draft content, the best NFL draft content that they have out here, over here at the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my co-host, my guy I go to war with each and every single day doing these player evaluations, man. Damian Parson, you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we always like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Listen, come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.